Despite the absolutely incredible rides that they're pumping out nowadays, when I say the word Vekoma, a lot of you probably think of those old, rough, outdated coasters from back in the 90s. Now, if that's your perspective of Vekoma, you might be a bit surprised when I tell you that the old Vekoma was pretty much nothing but beneficial, and they played a key role in shaping the roller coaster and amusement industry that we think of today. This can really come down to a number of factors that we're going to discuss today, including how many parks got their start with Vekoma's rides, their pioneering, marketability, affordability, low maintenance, and popularity, and how that all greatly helped the roller coaster industry form into the one that we know today. Now, as a lot of you may know, I am a weirdo and I do enjoy Vekoma's old rides like their SLCs, MK1200s, Flying Dutchman, and Boomerangs, but even if you're a normal human being and dislike a lot of old Vekomas, you have to recognize how beneficial they were to the industry, so let's get into why that is. First of all, it's pretty astonishing just how many parks got their big start with a ride from Vekoma. Just imagine, you're a small amusement park that has visions of getting out there and becoming one of the big boys. If you're in Europe, it might be hard to get an aero coaster as they don't do the work there, and if you fast forward ahead to the 90s, maybe it's too expensive to get a coaster from B&M or one of the new big boys. That means that you opt for a Vekoma, and this is what many parks ended up doing, many of them going on to do big things. Just to name some American parks that got their first big start with a Vekoma coaster, you have Marine World, now Six Flags Discovery Kingdom with Kong and Boomerang Coast to Coaster, Adventure World, now Six Flags America with Mind Eraser, Wild Adventures with Boomerang, Morris Pierce with Sea Serpent, Kentucky Kingdom with Vampire, Lake Compounds with Zoomerang, Hollywood Studios with the Rock and Roller Coaster, and even next year with the SLC opening at Lost Island Theme Park. But since a lot of American parks got their start with the Aero, there are even more international parks that got their start with Vekoma. I'm going to try to go quickly through this, but to name some notable ones, you have Warner Bros. Movie World with Lethal Weapon, Reno Aventura, now Six Flags Mexico with Boomerang, Walibi Flavo, now Walibi Holland with Condor, Movie Park Germany with Super Spiral, Energylandia with Roller Coaster Mayan, La Ronda with Super Menage, Walt Disney Studios Paris with Rock and Roller Coaster, Toverland with Booster Bike, Haida Park with Big Loop, Alton Towers with Corkscrew, Park Asterix with Gooderix, Teucenford with Lupin, Efteling with Python, and Walibi, now Walibi Belgium with Tornado. And that's only to name some of the most notable ones. If Vekoma wasn't around to provide that first big looping coaster to bring in the crowds and get those parks on their path, who knows if half those parks are even around anymore, or if they are, if we've even heard of them. There's a very high possibility that without Vekoma, we might not have Osiris, Nemesis, Zadra, Hyperion, Conda, DC Rivals, Storm Chaser, and a whole lot more. There are also so many reasons why buying one of Vekoma's coasters back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s would have been one of the most beneficial purchases for the park, and you can see this in the way the parks I've just named have emerged. First of all, these old Vekoma coasters were very, very marketable. Most of them have lots of inversions, and we know how much the GP love their inversions. But also for Boomerangs, they go backwards, which would be very appealing to the GP. SLCs are inverted coasters, meaning they hang under the track, and the GP love things like that. The Booster Bike model is a launch coaster and a motorbike coaster, and maybe most notably the Flying Dutchman model as well. Obviously, a flying coaster. I can't even tell you the number of times I've been about to ride Batwing at Six Flags America. A GP that hasn't been to the park notices that you're flying on it and is amazed. All these coaster models I just listed have some sort of gimmick that makes them very easy to market, and that'll impress the general public. Because they aren't going from park to park to park, they haven't seen these coasters before, and they don't know that they're clones, unless your home park is Six Flags New England. From the point of view of a member of the general public, they're going to be just as intrigued by a Vekoma SLC as a B&M invert. Also, those old Vekoma coasters were cheap as hell compared to the other options out there. If you wanted to buy a brand new Vekoma SLC today, which I really don't know why you'd want to do because the STC exists now, but if you did, it would run you about $7 to $12 million depending on shipping costs, according to Coasterpedia. Again, compared to a B&M inverted coaster, when you factor in inflation, Banshee costs nearly $27 million, or if you want to go for an invert from when SLCs were popular, Great Bear cost around $21.5 million, so that means that you could be paying about a third of the cost for a coaster that the GPC is pretty much the same. Many of these parks wouldn't have been able to afford that B&M invert or the Aero Looper, which Aero Loopers were actually surprisingly expensive. Viper at Six Flags Darien Lake cost around $18 million in today's money, so many parks could just opt for a Boomerang, and oftentimes you could get that Boomerang, then a few years later when you've made a profit, you can get the SLC, which you'll get a discount on. I've also heard that parts are pretty cheap for these coasters because they're so common and there's a large demand for them. Along with that, these coasters are also apparently pretty easy to maintain. I mean, think about it, aside from the Vekoma Flying Dutchman model, you don't see very many old Vekoma coasters that have a lot of downtime. I've been on 9 Vekoma coasters, and the only one that I've ever seen down is Batwing at Six Flags America. Parts are also very easily accessible, and you can see this for yourself, as if you search Vekoma SLC parts into Google for example, you not only have the page from Vekoma's website pop up, but you also have a bunch of third-party sellers like AmuseandRides.com that you can get it from. A similar thing happens when you search up Vekoma boomerang parts. Also, sort of going along with how easy these coasters are for parks to maintain, these old Vekoma coasters, especially the cloned ones, are very easily relocatable. This allows for parks like Lost Island Theme Park who's just trying to get their start get a cheap coaster for even cheaper than usual. I mean, if I had the funds necessary and I really wanted to, I could go to ridesforyou.com and purchase a used Vekoma boomerang for under $2 million. $2 million, that's absolutely insane. The cheap prices mean that there have been a total of 23 boomerang relocations, and in fact there's been so many that they take up almost an entire page in RCDB. Then along with that, there have been 8 relocated SLCs because it's a similar thing for that model. In addition to not only providing cheap, affordable, easily relocatable, easy to maintain, marketable, and popular among the general public coasters, Vekoma also made a number of big steps in pioneering certain parts of the coaster industry. I think this goes under the radar because people only think of Old Vekoma for rough, cloned rides, but in reality they made the first large-scale flying coasters, they pioneered what we know as the modern comfortable family coaster, they pioneered the modern mine train, they made the first motorbike coasters, they weren't the first company to do inversions in Europe, that was Schwarzkopf, but Vekoma really popularized inversions in Europe by making all sorts of inversions, not just vertical loops. Vekoma also made some of the first kiddie/family based inverted coasters, they invented the tilt coaster that Jinma Rides is now popularizing, and they made some of the first modern vertical lifts. Vekoma overall added so much to the roller coaster industry, and I don't see enthusiasts talking about this enough. Not only did their success with these cloned models lead to the new Vekoma we know today, pumping out masterpieces like Let Coaster, Fly, and Abyssus, but they added so much to the roller coaster industry as a whole with their pioneering and ability to give parks their start with a cheap, easy to maintain, plug-and-play coaster that helped parks out an unimaginable amount. So that's about all I have for this week's video. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you're feeling generous, leave any suggestions, thoughts, or video ideas down in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya.